Welcome back to another video. In this one I want to show you and explain to you what exactly I am doing with the car, what parts I'm using and everything, because I realized after the last video that I honestly just show everything but don't really say why I'm doing what. So let's start from the engine bay. So in here, that is not the actual engine that I'm going to use. That is just a mock-up 2.5 liter inline 6 from a 960. But all the mounts, the head is all the same when it comes to the mounting points as in the engine that I'm going to use. So the engine that I am using is a T6 2.8 liter from a S80 and a 960 3 liter head with stock camshafts but with stiffer valve springs. That is the combo that I found out is working the best for many people. Actually, Kevin Brumberg uses a very similar setup in his car. So I'm going with that engine, which has forged rods, which I got at Speeding NU, and a oil baffle for the oil pan and stiffer springs, which I bought at Modix Motortechnik from Sweden as well. So those are the two things that I changed inside the engine. Then on the outside, the engine mounts are some really stiff custom engine mounts from Speeding NU, which are also the exact same ones that Kevin Brumberg uses. Also big shout out to Kevin Brumberg and Modix Motortechnik for all the knowledge that they've given me, as well as to everyone on the Turbo Brakes forum. So thank you to everyone, because I don't have any experience with those engines. They helped me to figure out everything, how to do it. So from the intake side, this intake was custom made by my friend Malina, who's doing all the fab work on this car. This flange is the stock 960 rear-wheel drive engine flange from a naturally aspirated engine, but stock they are connected to the whole manifold. They are connected by silicone tubes. Each runner is connected individually. So here we decided to just use the stock flange with the injector places, with the mounts, everything, so I can use the stock fuel rail. But well, to the flange, a whole new custom intake manifold. So it's pretty small. It's not as big as I had it on my red block, but it should be just plenty for the power numbers I'm aiming for. Then I have a manual throttle body from N-Tuning. I wanted to keep it as simple as possible. I did not want to use an electronic throttle body. I just like to keep it simple. That's another thing that can break. I know the mechanical throttle body can break as well, but I don't know, I trust those more. Then, on the hot side, we got a Garrett G30 660. So that's a really big deal, something I'm really excited about. So I bought this turbo on N-Tuning as well. They made me an amazing deal and they were able to source it really fast. I spec'd it out how I wanted it. So the hot side is 0.83 and everything on this turbo is on V-bands, which is something I dreamed of. So when there needs to be any work done to the engine, around the engine, everything is on V-bands. On the last setup, you know, wrenching it in there when it's hot, it's such a pain in the ass, and here it's gonna be a good experience, a pleasure to work on it. So the turbo, as I said, Garrett G30 660, 0.83, hot side, everything on V-bands. Then we have a Turbo Smart wastegate, a 45mm Turbo Smart wastegate, which I also got from N-Tuning, and a screamer pipe, because on the last setup with the red block, I had the wastegate recirculated into the downpipe, and I actually had more issues with it than it helped, because it started cracking because of the forces going back and forth between the turbo downpipe wastegate manifold. It just started cracking, and once in a competition, my car was so quiet that the guy behind me, his car was way louder, so I couldn't hear my car. And so I decided that I want to have an open screamer wastegate, because going into competition, you need to hear your engine, you need to hear the revs, especially on the old setup where it had a huge boost lag. It has to be done. Open screamer wastegate is something that just needs to be done. And then as well. The exhaust manifold for the turbo was done by Malina as well. Let me get the lamp. So this is the manifold that Malina made for me. It's not equal length. This is not something that I worried about or asked him to do. I just wanted it to not be too short, because then you can really block up the turbo with gases on high RPM. So I wanted it to flow nicely. I know that the Garrett G30 should spool from pretty low, and I just wanted it to be able to breathe. So the exhaust is 3-inch, fully 3-inch from the turbo to the end of the exhaust. It's all 3-inch, no muffler, no restrictions. And then the piping is actually the exact same size from the outlet up to the intercooler. We did not go any bigger size until the intercooler. So it goes into the intercooler, and that's where it just opens up and goes into the channels. So we talked with Malina about how we're going to do it, and we figured out that this could be the best solution to have the best response, to keep the airflow as optimal as possible. So here we have no jumps to a bigger size, and then so we have the exit of the intercooler is 76 millimeter, and then the entrance of the throttle body is 80 millimeter. So we're just gonna have a silicone upgrade from 76 to 80, and that will be it. The next thing that was on the engine, it's taken off now, so there's more space, is the alternator. This is a 180 amperage alternator made to fit the stock bracket, and in the place where the AC went there's a tensioner. So this whole kit was made by Mazur Garage. Some of you might probably know him. He's a guy who does all the JZ, RB, SR custom alternator mounts and trigger kits and a lot of good quality parts for all the Japanese engines. And I actually went to Japan with him, and I was like, come on, do me a custom alternator bracket. I want to run your alternator. And he was so nice and did it for me. So now I know that I will not run out of electricity. So I know that when I run the electric power steering pump, which I don't know if I said it in the video yet, but I will be running a electric power steering pump. To run the stock power steering pump, basically it would be impossible with the manifold that I have. I would have to run the stock manifold, and I wanted to go baller and make this kind of manifold for my engine. So the power steering pump basically would need to be somewhere here, and yeah, it would not work. So you would think that this is a pretty straightforward build, but not really. So the next thing is the thermostat housing. With how it was stock, we would have issues with the clearance above the intake manifold. So in the last video I showed you how low it was. It was really close to touching the manifold itself. So we cut out a basically sandwich plate, which we made a hole in the middle so there's no restriction, to just simply lift up the outlet of the coolant. But again, with the inlet of the radiator being right here, it would sit basically on the throttle body, the hose from the radiator. So we decided to cut it here and just make a 90-degree turn to somehow push it this direction, so the throttle body itself will not be covered by the hose. You know, the temperature in the hose may also somehow affect the temperature in the intake. So just to avoid anything, we are going to route the fucking hose. The hose. We're gonna route the hose. Fuck the hose. We're gonna route the hose right here to avoid the throttle body. I'm going with this biggest stock option of the radiator. We will see. With the red block I didn't have any issues once I put the biggest one. As well, with a really strong fan, it should be fine. But if we have any problems, I'm just gonna order a thicker aluminum one and it should be good. So yeah, the brake booster, still gonna run it. We made a fitting that goes out of the intake manifold. So Malina welded a fitting that goes out here so we can fit the stock hose for the brake booster. The whole power steering setup is gonna disappear from here because it will all be in the trunk. So yeah, I think that's all in the engine bay. When it comes to the front suspension, BC Racing, I've been running it for a few years now and it works absolutely amazing. I actually bought the car with the BC Racing on already. It works amazing, so I'm not going to change it. Maybe I will do something custom with BC in the future for the rear, because it is difficult to get a lot of grip out of a solid axle. So I will try to figure something out to get more mechanical grip out of the car. And that is why I'm putting everything I can into the trunk. So the plan is to try to compete in a few competitions this year to see how competitive this car will be. To do that, you have to run a whole fire suppression system, which I actually received from Joakim. Big thank you for that. I've got the whole set with FIA stamp, everything, so I can run it for competitions. I will mount it somewhere here behind the firewall. And yes, I cut out the stock firewall because there were a lot of holes in it, and to basically make it fireproof, I would have to put a lot of work and a lot of cutting, measuring to mask up the holes. So I decided to just cut it out completely, and I will cut out a piece of steel and make a brand new firewall. I will run the stock fuel tank, but I will have a surge tank, a 2-liter surge tank with a stronger fuel pump, so I don't have to worry about fuel pressure dropping or anything. Since here is the opening for the stock fuel pump, I'll put the surge tank somewhere here maybe, then the fire suppression system somewhere here, and the power steering pump somewhere here. I'll also cut out this whole thing for the spare tire, just so in case I need to change the diff, there is way better clearance to do it on the car without dropping the rear axle, because before I had to undo the panhard bar and actually undo the lower suspension mounts to completely drop the axle to take out the diff on the car. So now when I cut it out, I basically just undo the panhard bar and I can take the diff out. And other than that, the whole cage is installed. I mean, you've probably seen it in every video, but it's really well done. In the places where there's spot welds on the car, I added some stitch welds. So those are the first ones that I tried. They don't look that good, but here, everywhere on the connections, I did some spot welds just to strengthen the whole chassis itself. If any hits or accidents happen, it should be able to handle more. I also showed that we were test fitting the shifter and handbrake setup. What I decided to do is mount the shifter plate straight and just weld a support down here so it can be completely straight, so that will be better for the shifter itself, and the hydro will have a better position. In spite of that, I'm cutting up the whole doors. Every single door I'm going to cut up completely, just leave the outside thing. I will cover it with a piece of ABS plastic, but I want to get this car as light as possible to be able to compete with actual drift cars, because let's not fool ourselves, this will be a difficult car to be competitive in. It's a big one, a big car, a setup that is not used very frequently, especially where I am. So there is Kevin, there is some other people in Sweden doing that, but here in this part of the world, of Europe, it's not that common. So I need to figure everything out to be able to compete with the best chassis, best drivers, because yeah, that's my aspirations, that's my goals. I want to be able to go to a competition and just not have to make excuses that, well, yeah, my car is difficult to drive. I want to build it that way that there's no excuses about the car and I just can progress to be a better and better driver. The battery is also going in the back. I don't know if it will, I think I will mount it down here or maybe behind my seat. I will put it on corner scales, or how do you call it? So I can see what the proportions is between each wheel, but I'll do it once everything is in the car. So the actual engine that will go in it once it's in there, because Malina is already finishing all the fab work on the car. Tomorrow or the day after tomorrow I'll pick up the car, pull out this engine, and drive it back to the guy who is doing my gearbox adapter plate. And so the adapter plate should be ready, I don't know, in a month or maybe less than 2 months. That's when I can put everything into the engine bay, onto the car. So all the heavy stuff that will be in the car, I'll know where they will be mounted, and I can put the car on scales and see how the weight is distributed, you know. So I know and I see how the weight is distributed, and then I can decide if I want to move something more backwards, forwards, more to the left, to the right, because that plays a big role when it comes to grip, when it comes to handling. Basically that's it. I did have a sunroof in this car, so that's a problem. I have a piece of metal that I can put on it, but I think I'll get some piece of fiberglass to put on it, so I save a few kilograms here as well. I think that would be it for today's video. I just wanted to make a quick walk around to tell you what I'm using, why I'm using this, and yeah, if you have any questions, please let me know in the comments, ask away, I'll be happy to answer them. I just want to give a huge shout out to Malina, who did all the fab work on this engine.
It was a pleasure, man. It was really a pleasure.
Yeah.
Working with all these parts that are out of my mind.
Everything looks really good. It's a shame that we're gonna put a heat shield on everything, because
it will be looking
better. Better?
Yeah,
you think?
I think so. It will be clean and not all oily and stuff.
At least at the beginning.
Yeah, at least at the beginning, yeah.
Before it spills oil everywhere. But yeah, that will be all. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.